Memory is the ability of the brain to store, retain and subsequently recall information. Now, memory varies within a population and there are different methods to memorization. Most people seem to be interested in this topic, especially when it comes to exam season, as some students have a huge amount of revision left to do with very few time left. And hopefully in this video I'll be giving you free memorization techniques and methods which I personally used around 2.5 years ago back in GCSE 2018 when I had around 7 to 9 days until my GCSE exams, and I had that 1 week holiday and I had all of that GCSE history, content, dates, all of the stories when it came to Nazi Germany and Cold War to understand, memorize and consolidate. And I only had around 9 days till my exam, but I only ended up spending like a week, 7 days within the half-term holiday because I had other exams to do. So these tips are the same tips that I used around 2.5 years ago for those exams, and alhamdulillah I managed to get an A star when it came to history GCSE. So these tips, even though I don't necessarily use them anymore all the time, or I might switch up between the methods, I used them back in the days and it did actually help me, and it helped me out to get those 70 pages done and consolidated for my history exams for me to do within 7 days. Now, the first method which I used was spaced repetition, and spaced repetition is an evidence-based learning technique that is usually performed with flashcards. Now, the way I've done this is that I took a little paper and I wrote down all of the dates, all of the names, all of the keywords that I need to memorize and I need to know by heart, and all of the important points for me to get the best marks. I wrote them down on a big piece of paper and I kind of like folded and kept it with me all the time. And as I went through this week, I would also write down more information, more key dates and all sorts of stuff that I need to memorize. So I would write them down, keep them in my pocket, and bear in mind that around this time when I did my GCSEs, 2018, around May/June, and that 1 week it was also Ramadan as well. So bear in mind that I kept that with me all the time and I was fasting, and what I did is that after every prayer I would open it up and just quickly go over it 5, 10, 15 minutes, try to memorize all of it. So throughout the day I would go over it at least 4 times. So after every prayer I would just quickly look at it and kind of try to consolidate it and try to remind myself all of the dates, all of the key things that I need to know. And after that, as time went like through the days, I would add extra information onto that paper, and then obviously from 1 paper it went to 2 papers, 3 papers. I would summarize down the notes and then keep it all the time. So after every single prayer I would go all the way from the first page all the way to the last page, to the last point which I recently added in, and I would just keep on revising that. And this made sure that by the end of the week I've gone through the entire paper so many times that when I'm doing the exam it's stuck into my head and I was able to do it. And I know it's a quite long cycle to do it and it's a little bit long to do it, but I did have a very limited amount of time. I only had 7 days and I knew that in my head, so I was pushing myself through that time because it was exam season, so I was able to go through the cycles and I had the motivation to do so. Now, the second method which I used was cramming. Now in education, cramming is the practice of working intensively to absorb a large volume and a large amount of information in a short amount of time. Now cramming is definitely a very controversial one. There are so many studies out there of people saying it doesn't work, it's ineffective and all sorts of stuff. Now the way I see it is that although cramming, I don't really like to do it. At least back in GCSE, I was in a position where I basically had 7 days, but it wasn't only for my history exam. I had like English language, English literature, math, science, all of these exams coming up, and there was this huge information overload. So I was basically in a position where I kind of had to cram and I had to do all of these hours of revision while I was fasting. So the way I thought about it is that, you know, sitting down and getting these large volumes of information in my head can actually be quite hard. So there are different methods when it comes to cramming, but in general I wouldn't suggest people to leave everything last minute, especially because you never know what happens in the future. You might be in a position where you leave it for last minute, but you have other priorities or other things coming up within your life, within your family, that can actually occur. So I definitely don't suggest to be in a position where you're forced to cram. So try to avoid that as much as possible. Now when it comes to cramming, it ended up working out for me, but cramming, the way I thought about it is that the faster I memorize things, I kind of tend to forget it much quicker, if that makes sense. Now I don't really know to what extent that's true or not. I haven't really looked into it, but it happens to me where when I memorize a huge amount of information within some time, within those 7 days, I ended up going to my exams and I remembered it and I wrote all of them down. But a few days after my exam, it just all ended up going out of my head, and I don't really want to do that, because when I learn something, I don't only want to do it for the exams, but I generally want to have that information, that knowledge within myself, so that I can, for example, when I'm tutoring my GCSE and A-level students, I have that information and I have that knowledge so I can pass it on to others. So that's why I don't really like cramming. But as I said, you don't really know how it works until you try it out. So obviously do your research, but I think sometimes it's important for you to try and see these methods and see whether it really works out for you or not. And the third method which I used was mnemonics. Now mnemonics is a system such as patterns or letters or ideas or associations which assist you and help you in remembering something. Now with mnemonics, they seem to help me quite a lot, especially when it comes to like words, numbers, and all sorts of stuff. When you need to memorize like a list of words, especially during your exams, I feel like anything with like a chronological order, you can just take that in, make a mnemonic, write it down in the exam, and kind of like save yourself some time, and it makes it easy for you to recall all of that information. And that's why I really like mnemonics. And I think recently in my anatomy lectures, which was previous semester, I had to memorize like some mnemonics for me to understand and kind of remember the cranial nerves, the cranial bones, the facial bones, and all of that stuff, whether the sensory or motor or whatever. Yeah, so all of this stuff actually makes it really easy, because there are a lot of things whenever you're studying, a lot of things that you need to understand, and a lot of things which you just have to memorize, you just have to know. And when it comes to list of words, anything with an order, I think mnemonics do a great job. And me personally, I don't like to make my own mnemonics, simply because maybe I'm just not good at it, but I just like to Google up the mnemonics, something that I can basically just find on Google, or my friends or my lecturers can give it to me. That way I don't have to waste any time to write mnemonics, and I can just memorize any mnemonic they really give me and use that in the exam. But if you want to make your own mnemonics, I think that's great, because if you make your own mnemonics, I guess you're a little bit more attached to that. You are more likely to remember the mnemonic itself, and maybe you can relate to it better, so that would be quite good. But for me, I'm just not good when it comes to making mnemonics, and I also don't want to like put that effort and all of that time to make a mnemonic when I can just basically find it on Google, as long as it helps me and helps me to remember and recall the information. But yeah, these are the 3 tips which I used personally during GCSE time. Now they don't mean that I necessarily use them now. My study methods and stuff like that always varies as I learn more stuff, and it depends on the content that you're learning as well. But when it came to history, when it came to GCSEs, I used these methods quite a lot, and alhamdulillah, it worked out to be quite fine. You can check my GCSE video, links will be down there in the description below. But yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see in my next videos. I guess with all of that lockdown stuff going on, it means I just have to basically be home and continue making these sit down educational videos. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and more importantly, I hope you guys benefited from this. And yeah, let me know in the comment section below. But as always, I'll see you in my next video. Take care, and